Hey, so thanks for your interest in ecosystem. I'm just going to be describing some basic usage to help get you started. Um, so here we'll open up the interface. And ecosystem is semi-modular environment. You can create three main types of modules and connect them together to create whatever sound you want. So we have a sound generator. We have just signal processor and a control module. And each of these three main types of modules have their own individual variations, which you can explore and I'll briefly touch on later. And then up here we have a menu for interacting with them. It's pretty self-explanatory. So I'll clear it all, and let's make our first connection. So I'll create a sine wave, and as you can see, it has a white circle around it, indicating that this object is selected. And when it's selected, its parameter menu becomes available up here. And when you hover over another object, when this circle appears, it indicates a connection can be made, and then a menu of what connections can made will show up right next to it. So let's make a connection. This is the output object. This object, there's only one of it, and any signal that connects to here is sent out the device to the next in the chain. So I want to send the sine wave out. So I'm going to connect it to the output via its input. So you just click here. And then every time you make a connection, you can see there's two knobs. The first knob is a bipolar amount, positive amount, negative, which is more obvious if it's a control value. And then this knob here, if it's an audio signal, it's panning. And if it's a control value, it's for offset. And there we have our first connection. So now I'm just going to demonstrate a control value connection. Right now I just have a square wave going into a filter, low pass filter, and then to the output. So let's create another sound generator, but this time we'll be using as a control a low frequency oscillator. So let's turn on the LFO, bringing the frequency way down, and also changing the waveform to something that's not anti-alias. And then you can see instead of going to the input, we also have another option here for a parameter, and this is the filter cutoff. It'll change here. We have pitch, and here we have other things like gain and spread. Okay, so let's affect the filter cutoff, and made a connection. Make sure your volume's around 0 here if you want to get the full amplitude of the oscillator. And then let's add an amount, just a positive amount, or a bipolar negative amount, which is hard to tell with a sine wave. And then offsetting it. Great. Now let's just bring in a control object to see how that works. So here's a control object. And then right now it's on a macro. And the macro can do a few things. One thing is just to help group it. If you want to control a lot of different values with one macro, it's a good way to group all the parameters to one knob and then affect that knob. But you can also use this as a way to bring these parameter values into Ableton, because right now it's very individual. You see how this menu changes depending on what object is selected, so you cannot map these objects to the macros or automation in Ableton. But you can use these macros to do that, and the way to do that is to create a dial and then sync it to one of these macros. So let's put it to the first one, and then look, now they are synced together, and then these macros, boom, you can map right in Ableton, automate in Ableton, do whatever you want in Ableton. So let's connect this to the pitch. Turn up the volume. let's turn this into a sequencer. Okay, and clicking this button will sync it to Ableton's transport. And there you go. That's how you can use the control object. I'll be going over some more things in a minute. Now I'm going to show you how to work with the MIDI and the envelope modes of the control module. So right now I just have something set up. I'm bypassing all of this right now just to show you the keys. So I'll turn up the volume, and you can hear this saw oscillator. And right now this MIDI, this dial is controlling the pitch of the saw and the square. And then what's controlling the dial is this thing called MIDI, which just gets your MIDI notes, and you can use that as a control value or as a trigger. So here's the control value, and I'll play some MIDI notes. So you can make like a little mono synth with it. So let me get rid of this. Okay, and then here I have two different envelopes, one for the filter and one for this addition, which works kind of like an amp. And there's a special feature here. So if I click on a MIDI or a sequencer, those are the only two right now, they can trigger envelopes. So if I hover over this envelope and go down to trigger, make that connection, turn it up as high as you want. That has to deal with the velocity limit. And let's connect it to this other trigger. And there, we have the MIDI keyboards note on and off via velocity controlling these envelopes, which get the velocity data. So let's play some notes. It's going through a filter and a delay. Let's just turn up some reverb.